Dog in front of the window that you can really see. Alright, well, I was just saying it might be glandulars. No, you're fat. You're fat. But there's a lot of white, ugly stuff out there. Ew. Ew. Oh, before anybody asks, it's a New Zealand flag, not an Australian flag. It's because I have friends in New Zealand. That's why it's up there. So I also got my Canadian flag up there. You see, my Canadian flag, I think, is frozen to the pole, but oh. It's too depressing to look out there. Let me tell you about the horrible news in the world. That'll cheer everybody up. Okay. All right, Japan. For the making of this video about 3 weeks ago, I guess, said we're going to do the QE thing that the Americans are doing, and they stopped QE in the States. Again, all these economies are linked, right? I think Japan's like not the third largest economy in the world, but something like that. Anyway, you'll have to research that. They got a pretty big economy. They are definitely in direct competition with China in that sense. I think Japan's a little more innovative, but you can't produce any. Nobody can produce the mass production China can, right? In that sense. So, but Japan has pretty much been a basket case since the '90s. The good news with the Japanese is everybody's working there. Like there's no idle hands there. So the bad news for them is that because their money's becoming more worthless, a watermelon's like $50 to $90. You know what I mean? Like it's in their money. So it's just the inflation is just ridiculous. Plus they're such a densely populated. Their cities are so densely populated. Because of the mountainous terrain of Japan. Well, it's basically an island, right? So most people that live in, like, say, Tokyo or someplace like that, that area is just those are the only flat areas, in the country. That's why the cities are so dense. Whereas here, our cities are not, they're not that dense because they're so spread out. Like if you take Toronto's probably the size of Japan almost. Well, it's not that big, but you get the idea. It's we have room to build a city outwards. They have to build everything up, and there's even people that live on little fishing boats and stuff like that. These little boats that they live their whole lives, basically moored on a dock, which is not a bad thing, except for when the tsunamis come in. But other than that, it's warm there. There's closet apartments. They're literally the size of a shoe closet. There's even some people that are the Japanese homeless people. Basically, they still work, but they can't afford rent, and they go to these. It's like, I guess, like a bus terminal or airport terminals, mall terminals, and you can rent. It's kind of like about the size of a couch. It's a little cubicle, the size of a couch that you can sleep in. And it's just insane how densely packed they are in there. This would be like an eight room apartment in Japan. You know what I mean? Like this is not everywhere, obviously. There's people that when they get out of the cities, they get a little bit more breathing room, but it's very dense. Their production and stuff. The Japanese are very innovative, stuff like that. But like anything, when you start, propping up this economy, that economy, you have to prop it up. It's going to collapse. It becomes a Ponzi scheme. That's all economies. When we look at here in Canada, like for example, the oil sands, okay. And somebody pointed this out the other day, and it's like, yeah, that's true. At one point, we were paying $50 a barrel and 45 cents a liter. Now we're paying $70 a barrel, and here in Canada it's probably down to around 50 some odd dollars a barrel by now, and it's $1.20 a liter. You know what I mean? So it's there's other things in there that if they can't make money at that, then it's just costing too much. They have to find more innovative ways to do this. But if you bail it out, then it should be nationalized. But the thing is they're not. These bailouts go to corporations and companies that are not nationalized. They're basically private companies getting bailouts. So they never ever have to, be innovative or anything like that because they can never lose money. You know what I mean? Now it looks like the butterfly effects of what's going on in Japan right now is after they put they still have a moving economy. It's just it's stagnated. It's in the sense of everybody's working, but they're just. They're just not building the value. They can't keep it going. Maybe not everybody's working, but you get the idea. Most people there work. Their kids go to school. They get good education. They have a relatively low crime rate. They they're always innovative. They do have a declining population. All populations around the world are pretty much declining, except for in the third worlds. Um, so times are hard for the people over there to a degree as well. But the thing is that the QE just got diverted to Japan. That's the QE that the United States said that's over. It's not over. It's because they're all linked. They're all the same banking system. Yeah, John Kerry out there today from the making of this video, talking about how ISIS is selling oil outside the Western banking system, the IMF and stuff like that. And I believe them on that, because when it comes to their banking system, trust me, they won't lie about who's in control there, and that's what this is all about, is the banking systems. ISIS is not about saving women and children or terrorists or anything. It's about who controls the oil going through Saudi from Syria and stuff like that to basically give Russia a hard time. It's about pipelines that we're going to go through Turkey, from Syria through Turkey to Russia, and that's what it's all about. It's always about the resources. And then after that, you can follow it up to Iran. Iran and Saudi Arabia don't get along, and there's just about as much oil in Iran as there is in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has refinement, Iran doesn't, but however, I believe it's the Shia side of things, where, again, you have to understand, it's all tribal there, so country lines don't kind of fall in the same category as the tribes do. And the part that Saudi Arabia has the most oil, basically, is closer in relation to Iran with the Shia. So this could become a problem for them in the future. So in Japan, they basically, now they're like not even 3 weeks later announcing a new recession. Okay. They went back into recession. So that means people aren't getting new jobs. People aren't, the economy isn't moving forward. Now, globally, we're in a stagnated economy kind of system. Yes, our economy kind of, our economy climbs a little bit. But again, all the growth, when you see where the growth comes from, doesn't really come from, okay, Canada, we're a little luckier. About 84 or 85% of our new jobs are private sector. But those jobs are like fast food jobs. Anything that's going to be in the oil sands is not really free enterprise. The oil sands are basically propped up by the Canadian government. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. If the whole bitumen thing, getting the oil out of the ground, which this will play into what's going on in Japan, because it's already affecting us here through Halliburton making a deal with, because Japan's announcing its recession. Halliburton, then one of our oil industry, I can't remember what sector, but they basically just announced that they're going to do like a kind of like a partnership type of thing to kind of counter this. Okay, I know it doesn't sound like I'm missing a lot of dots here, because I kind of forgot what they said, but the thing is that it's a butterfly effect. Everybody feels it everywhere. And again, with the oil sands, back in the 30 years ago, they were saying, that was technology we didn't have. We couldn't do it. Nobody in the world could do it at the time. To extract the the vast oil in the oil sands. They said it was there, but they didn't have a method of doing it. Then somebody figured it out using steam and stuff like that to get the bitumen out. But that took tons of government investment. So right there, that's the beginning of the fascist part of it, where it went from a private oil companies. Well, technically they were never private, but basically Shell, Chevron, all those kind of companies like that. They're all Rothschild owned at the end of the day. And anyway, Rockefeller, Rothschild, that type of thing. So anyway, when you get there, the technology starts coming in, they invest more, and they invest more, and invest more. Next thing you know, it's being propped up. And then it's like, okay, well, once it gets going, it'll make a profit, and away you go. But it's very complicated, right? It's a very expensive system. So yeah, you can get the resources out, but at what cost? And this is the same thing with gold. This is the same thing with silver. And I'm not a silver or gold bug guy. Well, number one, just can't afford it. But the thing is that it also goes with the idea that it's you can't get something for nothing, right? So this is what Japan is experiencing. You can't get something for nothing. So you can put as much money into the system, but you got to be able to get productivity out of it. And the sales for some Japanese companies, I'm sure, are doing like Mitsubishi and stuff like that, do fine. Toyota, they do fine, but it's not enough. They don't have enough Toyotas. They don't have enough Mitsubishis, that type of thing. So they're in a rock and a hard place in that sense. But, however, they're an isolated island, plus with the damage of Fukushima, not to mention what that's done to their economy. And God knows, like 10 to 15 years down the road, you're going to see some really horrible birth defects and stuff like that in Japan. You're already seeing the birth defects, but you're going to see some really horrible cancers and stuff like that go to poor people there. Again, like the radiation, it's some people say Fukushima's a little bit blown out of proportion. It is and it isn't. It doesn't help. I mean, it doesn't help. I don't think it's going to kill us all overnight. Again, the Japanese, if anybody proves that they can survive being blown up by nukes, it's the Japanese, right? They've got firsthand. They're the only population in the world that's actually been murdered off by nukes. And the thing is that people did survive. People still live in Hiroshima and stuff like that. It's just or around that area. It's just there was effects, there was side effects. Same like people in Ukraine with Chernobyl. There's still effects felt today, but life goes on. You know what I mean? So in that sense, yes, it is survivable. But not to mention Fukushima is much worse than a lot of these other bombs because they just keep polluting and polluting and polluting. The H bomb was one big blast. Over within a few minutes in the sense of, the fallout and everything might have fell for hours, but like the blast was like a split second, and then after that things burnt for maybe a few hours or whatever. That was it. The day after things were just smoldering, Fukushima goes on and on and on, and it's still, there's still radioactive steam coming out of the reactors, you know what I mean? And what's leaking into the ground there, who knows, So they got a lot of problems there. And again, it's kind of a bit of the mountain climber effect. When one economy goes down, you can see how it affects another one. This is why I'm not for globalization. I'm not against trade, but I'm against globalization where your economy is so interlinked with other people's economies that one falls, we all fall, And the thing is the QE, they diverted it to Japan, and it doesn't work there, Belgium buying, billions and billions of, treasuries or bonds or whatever, these secret banks that nobody knows who's buying them, but they're going into Belgium. All of a sudden, Belgium's starting to have all these problems with their economy. That's because that's the U.S. money going in there, flooding things and just kind of, that's what the Ukraine is about. It's a place to dump debt. That's what bringing up the illegals about. It gives an excuse to dump U.S. debt into South America, because you have to burn up that money or you're going to get hyperinflation, right? So they send it out everywhere. Problem is people are starting to try to send it back. And when that sends back to the States, then you're going to get your crash in the States, because then you'll have hyperinflation in the States. So that's the thing. If you can't spend in the economy and have a velocity of money going around fast enough so that you don't have to print like crazy, and that only comes through small business, not these big businesses. The only way it could ever work through the big businesses is, again, I'm not a fan of minimum wage, because everybody needs to be working at some level, I'm not a fan of minimum wage, because that proves to more and unions prove more to put people out of work or keep people from working than actual, it protects a handful of people to get really high paying jobs versus everybody else can't, never get a chance to get a kick out of the can, and they got to work fast food industry. Now that said, if you can compete, you can get the job, you should be allowed to get it. And I do not believe on caps on salaries or anything like that. However, what I do believe the way out of it is not through taxation. In fact, you need to lower your taxation to, reasonable. I'm even thinking that maybe what Sweden does with their taxing consumption rather than a personal tax may be a good way to go as well. But however, everything becomes astronomically expensive. So it hurts, everybody hurts in that sense. But does it work? Does it not? I don't know. I'd have to do a little more study on it. So I think you want to have a reasonable tax on goods and services to keep the money printing low, just to keep the money circulating through the economy and stuff like that. It's basically to keep government operational so that they don't have to keep printing money, right? That's one method, which we already do. We have the personal tax, which I think we should just have a flat tax, 10% on everything, and then property tax maybe 3%, whatever, or even less. Just not in a progressive tax, just here it is. The government lives within its means. That's the first thing every government needs to do. And only the people will get that done. The problem is right now, like if you look overseas, all the people are demanding more government to get their jobs back. But that's the thing, we need less government. Here in Canada, we're getting rid of a little bit of government. Yes, the government has grown bigger in certain sections, but we are getting rid of a little bit of government. Anything that's kind of redundant, so to speak. But we, really, if you think about it, the government we have right now, which is socialist fascist, they are not conservative. They're under a conservative brand, but they're, maybe socially they're a bit conservative, but fiscally they're socialist fascist. Proof is that they haven't just took an axe to every social program, and they didn't fire like every single government worker. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? They didn't do that kind of cut and slash type of. Sir Johnny MacDonald, he was conservative. He didn't need you, he fired you. You know what I mean? And he was very responsible to the taxpayer, basically. Everybody, you know, if you were a government employee at that time, you had to produce a receipt for where you had lunch. You had to stay within your budget. Now what they do is they give you a credit card and say, well, the government's too big to audit. We trust you. Here's a government credit card. Yeah, and we see how that works out. So I think, you know, if we stay this course that Canada is doing, eventually we'll get back to a manageable sized government. Problem is governments aren't getting bigger, smaller, they're getting bigger, which means you have to have more money to keep it going. You have to have more taxation. So then these progressive tax just make it impossible for the people outside government to do business. So you need to lower the tax, shrink your government first off, lower your taxes so people can do business, deregulate a bit. You can regulate more in some areas. Again, it's always a plus or minus on one side or the other. But once you've done that, the last thing you need to do is instate a mandatory profit sharing in all businesses, whether they're a mom and pop shop, a lemonade stand, or a big giant corporation. Then people won't care if the CEO is making 800% more, 875% more, you know, than what they were 30 years ago. People aren't going to care about that if the money comes back trickling down to the people. Right now, what's happening is all the money is just being hoarded. You know, they have 40% of the wealth to the 1%. 40% of the world's wealth to the 1%. That money is useless over there. It's not doing anything. That money has to come back. And when that money starts coming back, you don't have to print as much. So a profit sharing is what you need. So now, there's always the people out there that as soon as you say get rid of minimum wage, oh, well, people will be working for 35 cents an hour. Ask yourself this question. Would you work for 35 cents an hour? If your answer is no, then you don't have to worry about working for 35 cents an hour. Why? Because, yes, labor prices will come down and whatever. But the thing is it's a double-edged sword there for an employer, because here's the thing. You undercut the other guy's labor. People will go to the job that pays the best. And if you have skills and you're competitive, and this has always been proven to be right, if you are really skilled, okay, and there's a job that's, say, at $6 an hour, okay, and you're at that job at $6 an hour, and you go to your boss and say, look, I do this for you, I do this for you, I do this for you. And, you know, I'd like to see a raise. And the boss says, no, take a hike. Then you go over to the other guy and says, well, hey, I'll hire you for $8 an hour, you know, because I know what you can produce. Meanwhile, you know, that boss is never going to really tell you to take a hike. He's calling your bluff. He'll be like, okay, well, how about $7 an hour? Maybe the employee will be happy with that, maybe not. Or the other guy will say, well, it's $7 an hour. Here, come over to me and I'll pay you $8 an hour. It's called scabbing. It goes on. It goes on. All these Fortune 500 companies, that's why they're Fortune 500 companies, is because the guy that was getting underpaid over here, they threw more money at him and he went over there. So it works. You know, that it works. Now, you at some point, you're kind of paid what you're worth. You don't make a great hourly wage, so to speak, but the profit sharing. If you take a billion-dollar a company that makes like $75 billion profit and has like 5,000 employees, and you take 1% of that profit every year and divide it amongst all eligible employees, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Mandatory profit sharing. That 1% will never be able to hang on to that 40% wealth. They will have to keep cycling it back into the economy. Next thing you know, everybody's driving gold-plated sports cars with a different color for each day of the week. You know, like it's and they know this. They know this. It's I don't know why they don't do this, because everybody prospers. Because why? Here's what happens. Okay, well, you're busy at work. You know, I don't have time for house cleaning. I don't have that. Well, I'll take an extra $400 a month and I'll hire a house cleaner. I'll hire little Timmy down the road to cut my grass for $10 a week. And it's called spin-off economy. And that's how, you know, you could race your dollar to the bottom like we're doing now. This is proven not to work. This is why the world's in kind of a recession everywhere, or bouncing the line. You know, like I say, Canada's a bit of an anomaly, but we're not immune. We're not immune because we're too globally linked to everybody. And then the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership, I think, is going to be the coffin in the nail of all economies. It's just not going to work. It'll work for a handful of big businesses, and then everybody else will be out of work. And then, of course, people will revolt. That will go way of the dodo, and then maybe people will come up with a new system. But whatever the new system is, most people are going to demand minimum wage and a $15 an hour minimum wage, which can't be sustained. But what people could say is, if your company is making profit, you share your profits. If it's not making profits, you don't have to share it. But if your profit, even 1%, look, I worked for a company that did 13% plus an extra 7.5% into deferred profit sharing for your retirement that you couldn't touch until you retired. That was nice. And again, some of the checks were, I'll be honest with you, like, this is me working part-time most of the time. I started off at $9.30 an hour, and in 7.5 years I made with my raises, which raises would still be allowed, of course. And I would even keep raises as a mandatory thing, so you could start people off low, but, give them a raise. And I made it up to $15.15 an hour, which to me was pretty good for what I was doing. For a retail job, that was pretty good. And then the profit sharing, some years I'd get, my first profit sharing check was like 300 some odd bucks, hardly anything. Then it went up to like 700 and 800, something like that. Then 1,800, and then by between 3,300 and then around 4,200, and it was just like each year it was just growing and growing. The company was growing, everything was growing. The profit sharing, in 7.5 years I saw probably 400, almost 500 people come and go. But the people that stayed were just, and there were some people that worked way more hours than I did. And me, it was by choice. I liked working 3 days a week. I didn't want to work full time because, I can, time versus money. I like to balance the two. I tend to more aim towards time. Some people, it's the other way. There was one guy, he worked as much as he possibly could, and he brought home like an $8,000 check. Okay, think about that, okay? This is an $8,000 check clear. That's after taxes, okay? And he brought home $8,000 as a bonus check, okay? Ask yourself right now, if you're watching this video, what can you get with $8,000? And wouldn't it be nice if your company cut you in on your the profit sharing like that? Not everybody got that. I mean, there's some people who got a couple of hundred, but they didn't work as much. You know what I mean? So you see, work versus reward, Now, mind you, he'd been with the company for much, much longer. And the way the profit sharing worked was based upon your wages. So the higher you made, the more percentage of your wage you would get, But it was basically they took 13% of the company's profits. I would say even 1%, because these big, gigantic corporations would then, have to give back, And 1% of billions of dollars of profits. These are the people. Half of those people end up leaving, creating their own jobs. They won't have to go to a bank. Maybe some will. They'll say, okay, you know what? I made $8,000, $10,000, $25,000 bonus, which is more than what my wages were. Okay, we'll say you get that from like one of these big Fortune 500 companies. Well, $25,000. That's a business start. I've started businesses for like $50. They don't go very far. You get out of it. To me, I look at almost everything as some sort of a business venture, and I fail at almost all of them. I'll be honest with you, but I keep trying new stuff. This works, that works, whatever works. And again, success to me is kind of, it comes and goes. Like most of the time, you're poor. The other times you do well. It depends what you want out of life. Some people, they know exactly what business they want to get into and stuff like that, and that's up to you. But if you had the startup capital, like say 3 or 4 years, let's say you got a profit sharing of $25,000 a year, for 4 years, you take $100,000. Okay, we're going to go buy that place, so we don't need the bank. So right there, the place is bought and paid for. We might go take another $100,000 out of the bank to outfit it to, let's say it's a restaurant. We'll just use a restaurant for an example because it's easy. But most restaurants are out of business within the first 5 years because of the startup capital. It's just so expensive to buy the building, to renovate it. You're going to spend like $100,000 before you even open the doors. You know what I mean? On a lot of places like this. That's why they go out of business so fast. They just can't stay ahead of the payments. But how people used to build their businesses in the 1950s was quite similar to what I'm saying now. They would save up. They would work their crappy job, save up. Sorry. They would save up. Okay, and then they would put a down payment on a business or whatever. To give you an idea of the business that I'm talking, or the store I worked for, Princess Auto, that started. Guess how that business started out? And a lot of people were always confused about the name, how it got started. Why it was called Princess Auto when they didn't really sell car parts. Well, years ago in 1933, Harvey Tallman, he traded a pickup truck for a store on Princess Street. That was his startup capital. Was a pickup truck. And it was like a wreckers, car parts, that type of thing. And that's where it started. So, that's how people did things. It was a different medium of exchange, but it was still, and it grew from there. But that's when people could open businesses. Now the family carries it on, and they keep they bring it to where they got it today. Okay, so that's just an example. But that was only possible if you had the money to start something up, or a trade or whatever. Right now, it's impossible because of the regulations. You need to spend, thousands of dollars in, lawyers' fees and stuff like that. All that stuff is what keeps people out of business. You have to hire accountants and all that stuff. So if they go through the red tape stuff, you can get small businesses to open up left, right, and center. And if they did, well, this whole like even things like the oil sands wouldn't really be needed if people opened up businesses in their community, stuff like that. They wouldn't be needed as much, or it at least to be able to be nationalized and sustained in the sense that, okay, the country owns it, not private corporations, and we do what's the best of the country. With the Keystone Pipeline, for example, opening up, I don't know how much of a benefit that's really going to be. There's going to be some benefit, sure, but the jobs to make it, are going to be short term. The long-term jobs that are going to be there, I don't know how many there's going to actually be, and what's it going to cost to operate that thing. Plus, you have to understand we live in the, pipelines get attacked quite rarely by eco-terrorism and stuff like that. So I think with this pipeline, Keystone Pipeline, because it's been so front and center, there's going to be a lot of problems with that, building that thing. It's going to be sabotaged the whole way down. I can almost guarantee you that. It's just too controversial. So, is it going to be worth it? It's hard to say. To me, I'm like, why don't we build more refineries here in Canada rather than pipelines? You think about what the cost of the pipeline is, and think about what the cost of the refinery is. The refinery doesn't have to go all over the place, and stuff like that. It would be a boost to the American economy too. Not that it wouldn't be a boost for us. Right now, we're doing pipeline by rail, so invest more into the rail systems. But if you think about that, like passenger trains and stuff like that, Europe is way ahead of us on passenger. Japan, they're like super ahead on passenger trains, stuff like that. So there is other things we could invest in, but at what cost? But the things that we don't invest in that would be the most beneficial is small businesses. And small businesses add up very quickly. If every single person pretty much has a small business, and if they had to share their profits, big or small, which 1% of your profit will not, again, if we're talking 1% of profits, okay, it's not going to cut into your bottom line. It's not going to cut into your growth. It'll allow companies to grow because you're only taking 1% of it. That would be the start. Maybe even, if companies wanted to do more than that, which companies probably would. Why? Because, you can go work for that guy, okay, for that wage, and, he'll pay you a little less, or he'll pay you a little more, but his profit sharing is only 1%. We're 8%, or something like that. Again, you want to get the good employees. When you get employers competing for employees, wages go up. They always have. They always will. I've seen it, on job sites, everything like that. Wages don't go up easy, but they do go up. However, for the employees that are kind of mediocre, which is the average employee, wages might not go up much. You would still get raises from time to time, but however, you would at least get the profit sharing, which could get you out of a rut. Again, it's all money trickling down from the top. So it's a win-win-win situation. And not only that, it speeds up the velocity of money in your country. And that's what's needed right now. There's enough money out there. It's not put in the areas that it's supposed to be. They don't even need to be printing more money. It's just they're printing money to float things that are unsustainable. That's all. So small things that are, basically, like right now, okay, think about it this way. The war against ISIS, okay, so they take a $50,000 or $60,000 JDAM, they drop it on ISIS, it's gone. Okay, it burnt up a little money, but that money is still printed and it's still devalued. What would be better is say, okay, for $60,000, you could probably hire 2 to 4 welfare recipients in Detroit, and pass laws so that the labor unions can't keep these people out of work, and just say, hey, put these 4 guys to work cleaning up. Okay, the second JDAM, now you got 8 people at work. The refueling of the F-18 or the CF-18, there's $6,000. There's part-time work for somebody. You see what I mean? You could you just take the money and you put it somewhere else. Now the thing is when that guy that was once on welfare is out there, spending money on this, that, and the other thing. Again, spin-off economy. You know what I mean? And that's the way they don't look at it. They'd rather have Max Kaiser, I think, sums it up best. The Americans have a death-based economy. Debt and bombs. That's all they have to export is debt and bombs. And a lot of people don't understand what that means a lot of times, because they don't see it as, like I say, the war on ISIS, the war on terror, that's all debt. That's all printed money to keep it floating, so it doesn't implode on itself. You can't spend your way out of debt. So if you can't spend your way out of debt, you have to export the debt, get other countries to take your treasuries, or you have to go another route, and that's basically, go to war, which is basically, to drop bombs and fuel, and expensive to go to war. I mean, what's it going to cost the Canadian taxpayer for those 600 soldiers and pilots and 8 F-18s? See, F-18s, 2 are spares, but 6, and then 3 P-3 Orions, or CP-140 Auroras, surveillance airplanes. Those things, they're not cheap to run per hour. That's going to cost us a lot, but that's something that there's no value after it's expended. It's like your tank of gas. It gets you to where you're going, but once it's done, you don't have value in it. It doesn't, it's a consumable. War is kind of a consumable in a sense. So it doesn't create value. And but if you were to take that same money, and again, this war on ISIS thing, I mean, again, if it was about actually saving people's lives and bettering people, it would be one thing. But when it's a scam and it's not about, stopping ISIS, but it's about overthrowing Assad, about oil pipelines so that Russia can't benefit from it, or China, and you also know that Syria is the stepping stone to Iran, which then becomes a stepping stone to destabilize or surround China, which will get us into World War III, and we don't want that either. So when you know that, it's like you look at it and say, okay, well, that's not economy. I mean, it'd be different if they were saying, okay, well, these ISIS guys, yeah, they're terrorists. I mean, but who armed them at first, CIA gave money to the Saudi Arabians. The Saudi Arabians bought weapons and sent them to Libya. And, they fell into the wrong hands. It's funny how all these guys are the wrong hands. The Free Syrian Army is ISIS. These guys didn't just show up out of nowhere. These guys are made up of all kinds of ragtag. These are people basically trying to take their country back. And yes, there's extremely radicals. You would be terrorists like them if all you had for the past decade is bombs raining down on your wife and kids and stuff like that. You're going to act the same way. You know what I mean? Like it's, and these people, they're not coming over here. They're over there. People are going from here to over there to help their cause. So it's a matter of time before they do, really catch on that, hey, you want to hurt them, this is where you're going to hurt them. Like Saudi Arabia, for example, these ISIS guys, like, they're going to start blowing up mines and oil refineries there. They may or may not, or at least try to take them over because they know that these guys are going to squeeze into there at some point. Turkey's already dealing with this. Again, these guys are a nightmare. They're showing like some of people in Assad uniforms. Now again, we have an English-speaking British accent guy cutting people's heads off, and they have Syrian soldiers now. Assad soldiers are maybe some of them may have flipped sides, and that's well documented. You'll get that in any civil conflict. You see it in Ukraine as well. But Assad is not on the side of ISIS. ISIS is a U.S. proxy. Everybody knows that. That's why they haven't been stopped. Look, they wanted to stop. They would have boots on the ground in 5 minutes. They would slaughter these guys left, right, center. There's only 20,000 of them. You know what I mean? Gunship helicopters could probably do 90% of it. They're using CF-18s and the F-18s and stuff like that up at 20,000 feet. No, if they really wanted these guys gone, they would be going in there with the ultimate cleanup crews, which would be the Apache helicopter crews, and a few Black Hawk or Griffin helicopters with the gunners on the side. These guys will get rid of those guys. Yeah, you'll take some losses, but trust me, if they wanted these guys gone, they'd be gone. Why? They'd be just slaughtered from the air cavalry. You know what I mean? It's like Vietnam with no trees. You know what I mean? That's what they would do. Now there will be boots on the ground, but again, this is not to stop the war in Iraq. It's just to, again, it's burning up debt. That's what it is. It's a death-based economy. So more soldiers are going to go there, thinking that they're going there to help, but they're going to be going there to be slaughtered, and stuff like that. Oh well, you can go here, but you can't go there because of this, and this, and that's where they are. Bombing North Vietnam, for example. That's where all the missiles were. Oh, we can't bomb the North because it might offend start a war with the Chinese and stuff, crazy stuff like that. But it's, it's to keep the war going. You have to understand. Like Leon Panetta said it best. It's going to be a 30-year war. We're never getting out of there. General Dempsey or Petraeus, one of those two guys, it might have been Dempsey, said, "Look, get used to perpetual war. It's a death-based economy." So. We'll circle back to Japan. Well, Japan is basically, with it printing money and stuff like that, and it's pretty much been pretty much hammered by the U.S. dollar. They can't take anymore. At some point, people are just going to start jumping ship and sending this money back. Russia and China are already kind of doing that. Now, after this G20 meeting with the Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership pretty much seems to be have rolled out, although it still seems to be quite secret. People are saying, well, we're not going to know what it is until it's here. It's already here. We still don't know what it is. Canada's made deals with New Zealand and Australia and China based upon this Trans-Pacific Trade Partnership. We don't know what these deals are. We don't know what we've lost on this. If NAFTA was as bad as it was, NAFTA has not been a good thing for Canada. It's been a bad thing for Canada. It has not been a good thing for the United States. At first, it was good for the United States because all the jobs, went to from Canada to the United States. But now all those jobs that went from Canada to the United States, NAFTA basically, exported those to China. That's why China is where it is today. Is because they benefited the most off of NAFTA. Offshore, cheap labor, race your dollar to the bottom. Everybody that argues that, oh, well, you need to have an inexpensive dollar to be able to do trade. Well, no. Again, if you race your dollar to the bottom, you'll get there. You need the opposite. You need a really strong dollar, so when you do sell something, you actually make money off of it. You might not sell as much. This is why I'm not a globalist. I'm about value. I'd rather the guy spend 3 weeks building a spoon that's immaculate, and when he sells one of them, he makes $1,000 profit off of it. You know what I mean? Then, now the average person, the way they think now is everyday low prices. But that's why people at Walmart that work at Walmart cannot afford to shop there. Same reason why McDonald's. People think, oh, no, people just got health conscious and stuff like that about McDonald's and stuff like that. That's why they're losing so much, business. And same with Coca-Cola. No, that hasn't changed. People just, they're cutting things they don't need. They're cutting things they can't afford because nobody has any money. And, when nobody has any money, you're going to have all kinds of problems. So anyway, I guess I'm going to leave it at that. So we'll have to keep an eye on what's happening with Japan there. If they go to recession, the next is going to be bad for them. Again, their economy's struggled. An island nation has limitations too, but that said, it's the coincidence of, and again, I don't really believe in coincidence on this. You have QE3, the United States, we ended it. Japan starts it up right away. So it's basically they diverted it to Japan. Again, that's globalism. That's the IMF for you. That's none of it's good. The whole system needs to be scrapped. But when the system, it doesn't matter if we do the slow bleed out or whatever. Eventually, people are starting to notice that they just don't have the money they used to have. That they're more poor, and that at some point, you just can't get blood from a stone. So either we have small entrepreneurship, even big businesses are fine. But the thing is we need the velocity of money, and the only way that's going to get here is if the 1%ers around the world are not hoarding 40% of the world's wealth. Something like 53% of the world's population has only like 4% of the wealth or something, or 4.3% of the wealth. But now, mind you, somebody who lives in, say, like Bangladesh, okay, or someplace like that, their cost of living per month isn't thousands of dollars. So yeah, okay, they make $1.50 a day, but they're not, their expenses are not like here. They're not paying $3 a bag of milk, that type of thing. Well, because they probably don't have bag of milk, just little jars, go right up to the goat or the cow, So the point is that they're not, their cost of living isn't like here. But that said, it doesn't mean they're not worse off than us, because they're still in the Stone Age there. But their economies are actually more honest. Even ISIS, as insane as they are, and I mean they are insane. Don't get me wrong. The fanatics there are fanatics. Okay. They want a Sharia compliant currency, which is gold and silver. That they didn't believe the Sharia. They never believed in paper-backed currencies. That type of thing. So even as insane as they are, even they get it economically that you have to have value, something that you can barter and trade. Money, again, currency is more about control, and controlling the resources is also helps to control the concern. Because if you have the resources, you can control the currency. You can say, well, we'll accept this resource, whether it's gold, gas, oil, whatever it is, in any currency we choose, and that's what that's why they're trying the proxy war against Russia. on their gas front. That's why the barrels of oil have come down, but the prices haven't really dropped. They dropped a bit, just enough for people. They see a few cents drop at the pump, but like it's like that they're it's what that it's a sham. It's more to hurt Russia's oil production because their economy is based on that, but so is Canada. So that could backfire on us too. So it destabilizes the world that way. So you got low oil prices, okay, but the thing is the Russians are saying, hey, we'll take oil in other currencies other than U.S. dollars. And that's what got Gaddafi killed. That's what got Saddam killed. That's why, that's why they don't like Iran, because Iran basically goes around the U.S. dollar in other ways. They trade in other currencies. So the whole thing of this, the World International Monetary Fund and stuff like that, is the way they want it is all oil to be priced in U.S. dollars. Okay. Now, if it's not priced in, the only way they can guarantee that it's going to be priced in U.S. dollars is if they have control over it. So, when ISIS, steals money or steals an oil refinery and sells money outside the U.S. dollar, that's what makes the U.S. mad. Not that they're beheading people. They don't care about that. That's just plain politics. They don't care. They care about that it destabilizes the U.S. dollar because now they don't have control over that. But look at the G20 meeting, just to finish up here, with all of the semantics that went on at the G20. At the end of the day, you've seen the alliances of the BRICS countries and Russia and China. Now, China, again, they kind of stay silent. They play all sides. But you've seen very clearly that a lot of the BRICS nations were doing deals with each other, not worrying about the others. And that's what has the U.S. banking system on shaky ground, is that eventually some people are going to say, look, if we can sell oil in the ruble and this and that, in the long run, it's going to be better for us. We don't need these U.S. dollars, and they're going to come trickling back to the States. And when they do, you're going to see massive inflation in the States. And people are trying to sever that tie now. Again, while the slow bleed out's happening before a big collapse, while everybody resets, and and when it happens, like when it actually goes into a collapse mode or the bleed out is so far gone, again, in the States you have 94 to 96 million people out of work. That's a third of the population. That's a depression. Just because the mainstream media doesn't say it's official, doesn't mean it's not happening, right? And the thing is the bread lines in the States are electronic, so people go and they get a welfare check. The second those bread lines are cut, you will see massive chaos in the streets. You can just look at any time an EBT card system goes down in the States. If it's in a Walmart, the Walmart gets cleaned out. Or a grocery store, wherever it is, it gets cleaned out. It almost incites an instantaneous riot. Picture the entire country like that. Again, doesn't mean all 94 to 96 million people will riot, but probably a few million will. And you're going to see it. And at that point, people will say, okay, well, what do we do? Oh, well, we got to raise the minimum wage. No, you need to drop the minimum wage, get people back to work. You need to stop the wars over there somewhere. Again, the only person right now that would be best would be Rand Paul for president. But even at that, you got to get the Tea Party in there is your best chance. You're not going to like everything they do, but, and they're going to be bad in the sense that they're just going to cut everything and put everything out of job. But at least they'll get out of the foreign entanglements. The foreign entanglements, and unfortunately Canada's starting to jump onto that bandwagon of foreign entanglements. We can't afford that. We don't have the population to sustain that. We don't have the money to sustain that, nor do we really want to get into that kind of a, Switzerland, kind of approach to things I think is better. If the people in the Middle East want to beat each other over the head for the next 200 years, they got to figure that out themselves. They got to figure that out for themselves. So I guess I'll leave it at that. So we'll have to watch and see what happens. But again, doesn't look like there's going to be anything good on that front. And considering for those of you who are not here in Canada or the United States, again, this is when our economies usually kind of slow down a bit too. We're going to get a bit of a spike probably, just before Christmas. But last year, and this is the thing about the mainstream media. It's like they'll come out, it's been a record high, and then a month later, well, the numbers weren't as good as we thought they were. And right now in Canada, it's like, the housing, they're up 7.1%, but is it us just, selling? And again, we've been very pro-China behind the scenes. Basically, China coming in and buying all kinds of factories and stuff like that. Basically, we've sold away our country. In the States, it's the same thing. It's the Chinese economic free trade zones. There's about 270 of them that were being built. You don't see them because they slip in very, very under the radar. Company goes out of business, Chinese come in and buy it. And then, when they, again, at the later date, they will be running the government. And it might not happen for a decade or so. But if they do, I mean, that's the problem with these big lawyers, all being politicians, being lawyers, pretty much. These aren't for the common man. They're for big businesses. They're for, things that don't serve the best interest of the public. Anyway, I'm babbling now, so I'll leave it at that. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. If you like this kind of content and you would like to make a donation to the channel, there will be a link down below. And thank you for everybody who has. If you'd like to be mentioned, just let me know, and then I'll mention in the next video or so, and that type of thing. So I'll leave it at that. So have a great day. Be true to yourself, be true to others, and always do the right thing. Have a great day. G'day, hi, and welcome. Morning graphic. Not because I have a big fat dog in front of the window that you can really see. Well, I'm just saying, it might be glandulars. No, you're fat. You're really fat. But there's a lot of white, ugly stuff out there. Ew. Ew. Oh, before anybody asks, it's a New Zealand flag, not an Australian flag. It's because I have friends in New Zealand. That's why it's up there. So I also got my Canadian flag up there. You see, my Canadian flag, I think, is frozen to the pole. But oh. I don't know, it's too depressing to look out there. Let me tell you about the horrible news in the world. That'll cheer everybody up. Okay. All right, Japan, from the making of this video about 3 weeks ago, I guess, said we're going to do the QE thing that the Americans are doing, and they stopped QE in the States. Again, all these economies are linked, right? I think Japan's like, not the third largest economy in the world, but something like that. Anyway, you'll have to research that. They got a pretty big economy. They are definitely in direct competition with China in that sense. I think Japan's a little more innovative, but you can't produce any. Nobody can produce the mass production China can, right? In that sense. So, but Japan has pretty much been a basket case since the 90s. The good news with the Japanese is everybody's working there. Like there's no idle hands there. So the bad news for them is that because their money's becoming more worthless, a watermelon's like $50 to $90. You know what I mean? Like it's in their money. So it's just, the inflation is just ridiculous. Plus, they're such a densely populated, their cities are so densely populated, because of the mountainous terrain of Japan. Well, it's basically an island, right? So most people that live in, like, say, Tokyo or someplace like that, that area is just, those are the only flat areas, in the country. That's why the cities are so dense. Whereas here, our cities are not, they're not that dense because they're so spread out. Like if you take Toronto's probably the size of Japan almost. Well, I mean, it's not that big, but you get the idea. It's we have room to build a city outwards. They have to build everything up, and there's even people that live on little fishing boats and stuff like that. That these little boats that they live their whole lives, basically moored on a dock, which is not a bad thing, except for when the tsunamis come in. But other than that, I mean, it's warm there. There's closet apartments. They're literally the size of a shoe closet. There's even some people that are the Japanese homeless people. Basically, they still work, but they can't afford rent, and they go to these. It's like, I guess, like a bus terminal or airport terminals, mall terminals, and you can rent. It's kind of like about the size of a couch. It's a little cubicle, the size of a couch that you can sleep in. And it's just insane how densely packed they are in there. This would be like an eight room apartment in Japan. You know what I mean? Like this is not everywhere, obviously. There's people that when they get out of the cities, they get a little bit more breathing room, but it's very dense. Their production and stuff. The Japanese are very innovative, stuff like that. But like anything, when you start, propping up this economy, that economy, I mean, you have to prop it up, it's going to collapse. It becomes a Ponzi scheme. That's all economies, When we look at here in Canada, like for example, oil sands, okay. And somebody pointed this out the other day, and it's like, yeah, that's true. At one point, we were paying $50 a barrel and 45 cents a liter. Now we're paying $70 a barrel, and here in Canada it's probably down to around 50 some odd dollars a barrel by now, and it's a buck 20 a liter. You know what I mean? So it's, there's other things in there that, if they can't make money at that, then, it's just costing too much. They have to find more innovative ways to do this. But if you bail it out, then it should be nationalized. But the thing is they're not. These bailouts go to corporations and companies that are not nationalized. They're basically private companies getting bailouts. So they never ever have to, be innovative or anything like that, because they can never lose money. You know what I mean? Now it looks like the butterfly effects of what's going on in Japan right now is after they put their, again, they still have a moving economy. It's just it's stagnated. It's in the sense of everybody's working, but they're just they're just not building the value. They can't keep it going. Maybe not everybody's working, but you get the idea. Most people there work. Their kids go to school. They get good education. They have a relatively low crime rate. They're always innovative. They do have a declining population. All populations around the world are pretty much declining, except for in the third worlds. So times are hard for the people over there to a degree as well. But the thing is that the QE just got diverted to Japan. That's the QE that the United States said that's over. It's not over. It's because they're all linked. They're all the same banking system. Yeah, John Kerry out there today from the making of this video, talking about how ISIS is selling oil outside the Western banking system, the IMF and stuff like that. And I believe them on that, because when it comes to their banking system, trust me, they won't lie about who's in control there, and that's what this is all about, is the banking systems. ISIS is not about saving women and children or terrorists or anything. It's about who controls the oil going through Saudi from Syria and stuff like that to basically give Russia a hard time. It's about pipelines that we're going to go through Turkey, from Syria through Turkey to Russia, and that's what it's all about. It's always about the resources. And then after that, you can follow it up to Iran, and Iran and Saudi Arabia don't get along, and there's just about as much oil in Iran as there is in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has refinement, Iran doesn't, but however, I believe it's the Shia side of things, where, again, you have to understand, it's all tribal there, so country lines don't kind of fall in the same category as the tribes do. And the part that Saudi Arabia has the most oil, basically is closer in relation to Iran with the Shia. So this could become a problem for them in the future.